at Women in Power, and then this is the politics edition. So yeah, I want to ask you again, if there's any questions for O20 specific, if you have anything with regards to what we do that you would like to ask, feel free to send me a message, go on our Instagram, our website, or email. And for now, thank you everyone again. And I would like to give it to Naomi, who's going to host the rest of this event.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me quite well. Otherwise, let me know in the chat. So yeah, I'm Naomi. I'm the social media manager of O20. I've joined through the event, actually, previous event. So it's quite funny to actually host one right now. So yeah, I'm social media manager of O20 and as well as today interviewer. And I just want to briefly mention that initially there were 3 speakers today joining us, but one couldn't make it, unfortunately, last minute. So yeah, we're gonna only have 2 people that are gonna be interviewed by me. So the topic, as you probably already seen on Instagram or in other social medias that we have, it's about women in politics. So it's going to be a very interesting discussion about the struggles, but as well as the achievements that women have gained in this quite difficult environment, if I can say. And I think the best way to do so, to understand like the ups and downs, is to actually have a clear discussion with women that are currently working in this field. So yeah, we're gonna have an interview, of course, as well as a quiz, which I'm gonna briefly mention later. And just to quickly give yeah, the microphone, the virtual microphone to the speakers so that they can present themselves briefly, maybe with a few sentences. I don't know who wants to start, maybe Sandra?
Thank you, Naomi, and thank you for this opportunity. Really nice to see all of you. My name is Sandra Doevendans, and I'm a member of the Regional Council in the north of Holland for the Labour Party.
Nice, thank you. And Marit, if you want to follow up.
Yes, hi, my name is Marit Maij. I was a member of parliament also for the Labour Party from 2012 to 2017. And now within the Labour Party, I'm the president of the regional board here in the province of Zuid-Holland.
Thank you very much. So as I mentioned before, we're going to have a little quiz. It's not, we don't want to like lecture you guys or test you. It's just to see what you know about the field of like women working in politics, to see what you guys have been thinking or knowing for this past time, and maybe, I don't know, learn something new. So if Dana can share the screen with the questions. So we're going to have 5 multiple choice questions, and you can answer in the chat by submitting your answer. And then we're going to find out which is the wrong or the right answer. So shall we start? We can try with the first one. So what percentage of all national parliamentarians worldwide are women? You can just submit your answer, of course, as well as the speakers. I want to see what Marit and Sandra are going to answer. I am very curious to see like what are the thoughts behind this question. I can see a lot of answers. Some I've guessed, some not quite sure. All right. I'll give you a couple seconds to grasp all the answers, and then I'll give the right one. Okay, so I'm going to give the answer. The answer is B. So congrats to Sandra. I think you got it right. The answer is B. Following, let's go to the next one. What country has the highest number of female parliamentarians? I'm very curious to see what the answer is going to be. So let's start with the answers. Oh, wow. Data, I can see you went right on. Okay, C, some D, some C, A. All right. A couple more. Okay, so the correct answer actually is C. It's Rwanda, which is quite surprising because people would probably think Finland or any other Scandinavian country because they seem to be more progressive. But Rwanda, as well as a lot of African countries, use quotas. So that's why there's more of a female representative in the country of Rwanda. Next one. As of what year do women in every country have the right to vote? I want to see what Marit has thought of the answer. Or Sandra, any idea? Quite a lot of answers already. So the answer is D, shockingly. I know it's 2015, because Saudi Arabia was the last country to allow women to vote. So yeah, it's quite late, but it's from 2015. I want to hear Sandra or Mary what they maybe have to comment on the question.
Well, to be honest, I recently wrote a thesis on human rights and on women's rights. So I have a straight A so far on on your questions, but it is shocking to see that it was only 2015 that women had, and that is active voting right. It's not passive voting right on all the levels, even in a number of countries.
Yeah,
exactly. So it is quite shocking. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go with the other question. From 1960 to 2015, how many women in total became national leaders? So with national leaders, we mean like prime ministers or president. Okay. Okay, I think people are getting this quite correctly already. I think probably this was the easiest, apparently. Okay, so the answer is A. So in the span of 55 years, only 108 were women, which is a very low number. And I really cannot wait to see this change because yeah, 108 is very low. Let's go with the other one. What country has the most political inequality between men and women? I'm also very curious to see what the answers are going to be. So let's see. A, B. Sandra, what do you think is going to be the answer to this question?
I thought Hungary.
Let's see. I'm going to reveal the answer. So the answer is Japan, which is also quite shocking because Japan, it seems to be very also progressive and westernized country, but in reality, the question, yeah, it's C. And we also hope to see the change in this as well. So I hope you had the chance for everyone to learn a little bit from this quiz and to get more comfortable with the context that we're going to bring forward right now. So yeah, we can fully start with the little discussion that we prepared. We divided this discussion in personal questions and more of like women in politics questions so that it's easy for people to follow up. I'm just going to state the question and maybe you, Sandra, can start with the answer.
Sure.
Yeah. So as a young woman, were you driven toward becoming a high ranker in your field? And did it result as a natural evolution of your process of professional choices?
Well, actually, my life was a little bit different because when I was 21, well, actually, I didn't got my high school diploma. So, and when I was 21, I started as, well, I thought I'm going to buy a bar in Amsterdam. So I actually was an entrepreneur and I was trying to do so. And after 1.5 years, I sold it because of it was really dangerous and death threats. But in the end, I was pregnant as well. And I had like a big debt So that was the time when I was thinking, oh, I need to go back to school. And because my son was coming, and I was like, well, you have to set a good example as a mom, right? So I started actually when I was 23 with evening school, and then I went to university. So actually I was 28 when I finished my anthropology. And in 2012, I started to become more political active. And that's how I became, so I actually have a second life right now in politics.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a different way for me, but since 2015, I'm a member of the regional parliament. And actually in all those years between 2012 and 2015, I learned a lot of things. And I thought, well, all the things that happened to me, I want to change or, try to do something to make it better for others.
That's very inspiring, actually, to hear that you had a completely different start and now you're in a whole different position. That really is a meaningful process to see. So the second question, you can both comment, maybe it's easier so that you both have the chance to answer. What are the most significant personal and or professional decision you had to make to achieve this position? So Marit, you can also comment as well, so it's easier to have both sides of the answer.
Marit, are you going to start?
Yeah, I can start. I think the answer lies a little bit in what Sandra just said, is that the main thing is just do it. If you have a feeling that there is something that you are passionate about, if there is something that you are passionate about in the public sphere and that you maybe want to change or you want to improve, the best thing is to step forward and simply do it. When I was a teenager, I was president of the National Association for School Students, the Landelijk Actiecomité Scholieren, for those who are Dutch in this group, which was back then, of course, different in the 1980s than it is right now. We didn't even exist for 5 years when I started, but it came in my way, and I thought, and people asked me if I wanted to do it, and I thought, well, of course, you always, and this is something that I think women do more than men, start to think whether it is appropriate, whether you have time, if it's difficult, and maybe other people are also very well equipped to do it. The main thing is just do it. Take a step forward and simply do it. And sometimes it goes wrong. And when it doesn't work well, then maybe you're disappointed for a moment. But the best thing is to get over it and try again.
Yeah, that's also very
totally
good.
agree with that. I think that's the most important thing, because, and what you say, Marit, is so true, because women mostly think, oh, can we do it? Are we, able enough to do it? And I think if you ask men, they're always like, oh, they see 5 things and they can do 2 or 3, and they think, yeah, I can do it. And we see, as women, we see 5 things and we can do 4, and we're like, I don't know, I can't do that one thing, And I think that's the most important thing also for women and men, to inspire and motivate each other just to try it, I think I'm a big product of, falling on my face and just get back up, because that's the only thing. What you can do is stand up, clean yourself up and maybe cry a little bit and then move on, because otherwise it doesn't happen. So it's really important to thrive the best and, inspire each other. And I think that's really why this event is really important, because I see some names and some pictures of women, and I hope really that, within a couple of years, you're also achieving your dreams.
That's very beautiful to hear, because I like, as a student, as a young woman, and I'm studying and I have all of these ambitions and ideas. So also, like, looking at myself, I'm like, should I do this? Should I do that? So hearing this is really like encouraging to just be like, I want to do this and I'm going to focus on this. And I feel like the upcoming question is really also a good one, because it's connected well to what you just said. So since you entered your field, has the field changed for women? Like, have you noticed any growth or any, just changes? And maybe Sandra, you can start, and then Marit can follow up.
Well, yes, actually, when I started in 2015 in my regional council, I was the only colored woman and we have 55 seats because the regional has seats compared to how many citizens you have in the province, in the region. And I was the only colored woman. And I was like, okay, now I'm here. And it's like a really big building and it's quite beautiful. And it was my first act in politics. I was also looking like, how do people do it? And they speak different and you have all those etiquettes. But now, like the second term in 2019, we had elections, and now we have more women of color, but also more youngsters within the regional council. So I see it's changing for the good.
Yeah, Marit, do you want to add something to what Sandra just said? Maybe your perspective.
I think yes and no. I think it's changing, and there's definitely more women present in regional parliaments, in national parliaments. If you look at the trend over the last, let's say, 30, 40 years. But at the same time, you can also see that the big increasing number in female representatives took place actually at the end of last century, which is 20, 25 years ago. And ever since, if you look at the national parliaments, the percentage has been between 30 and 40, but it's going down. In the last elections, it has gone down. It's still over 30, but it never touched 50, which of course would be a good next step. And at the same time, I think you see there's more women present. More women present in important positions, but still the main positions. Now you have this list of heads of state in the world, and then the number of heads of state or heads of government that were female. In the Netherlands, we haven't had that yet. And when a mayor is a woman, this is like the big news. It's not. It's more of the exception than the rule. And this is a thing that I feel is really. There are some steps that we still have to take in the Netherlands. It's quite, yeah, I feel a little bit disappointed. Maybe that's not the correct word, but I do feel a little bit disappointed if I look at the evolution that we've had, that somehow we've had quite we did a big step in the end of the last century, but the next step is not taken yet. And still when women are appointed, it is important to notice that, they are capable women.
Of course.
It's not they are there because they are a woman. No, they are capable women. This is not something that you ever say about a man. And especially like Sandra says, a woman of color. Here you get the whole thing around it. This is a special woman of color from this special background, and she has done this and this and that. So she is capable of doing the job, like excusing the person. And not by nature accepting that this person is also, of course, capable of doing the job, like a man would be able to do the job. So I think there is still, we have moved forward, but we're not going fast enough. And I hope, I turn 50 in a year, and I hope that before turning 75, it will change. But I think it goes slow. And to be honest, I have a feeling that it goes a little bit too slow.
Okay, I see the perspective of this question were a little bit different, of course, Sandra being a woman of color. But yeah, I also agree with the fact that it's a little bit slow, and I'm only 21, so I've only seen a little bit of it, but from what I've seen in 21 years. And for what I've also heard from my parents and stuff, it's true, it's going a little bit slow, and we definitely need to take the next step, like take a jump, a leap. So I totally agree, and I just want to address this.
Maybe if I can just add a little bit, I'm from a family of politicians, female. My mom was a politician. She is in her late 70s now, and we sometimes have discussions. And then I remember when I was active in Parliament, we had discussions, and I told her let's say the sexism that I came across, and she said it's amazing. This is the same that I came across 20, 30 years ago. So apparently the debate on this topic didn't change. It doesn't matter what your political color is, but let's say the prejudice still exists.
That's true.
So that's why I say I hope that when I'm 75, this will definitely have changed for the next generation. But we need to work on it.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you, Marit, especially if you look at sexism, because of course, you know, when I looked at 2015, I was the only colored woman, and now we have more in the regional council. But yes, of course, if a woman speaks, it's more difficult to get the attention of men, and also within the brain, some things happen in a man's brain if a woman's voice is out. You know, it's like something biological happening why they can't really hear what we're saying. And like, you know, if you have a face like me, like a youngster's face, but I'm almost 37, but still, you know, I look really young, then it's more difficult to get the same attention. And also, you know, what you say to be heard the same way as an older male would say the same, you know, it's different. And still that sexism is everywhere. And even if we look at Amsterdam, we have our first female mayor, but the approach she gets is totally different from all the men who've been before her.
Yeah, thank you. Totally agree with everything that you just said. And I just want to briefly address to everyone in the audience that we're going to have a little Q&A at the end. So you can, write the question or have them settle in your mind. And then we're going to go through them at the end so that we can do this smoothly and not jump on too many questions at the same time. So let's jump on the other ones. How has your experience working in a team, and can you feel a difference from when you started to the way it is today? So like working in a team, did it change through time? Maybe Marit can start.
Well, currently, since politics is not my daily job, I am a director at a foundation, and I lead the team, and it's normal. And when I was president of this school student union, it was normal to lead the team. But at the same time, I do understand that it's not always normal when you look at positions in teams. And like Sandra says, when women talk, somehow the attention is different. And somehow also, and I think this is a thing, I saw some of the questions in the chat. I think somebody asked, you know, what's really holding us back. And I think it's also sometimes women themselves who are holding themselves back and who are holding other women back, because you know, I think it's good to support each other and to give more strength to each other as a group also. And often we don't do that so much. I think one of your later questions is about women that turn into men once they are in power, and this is something that happens a lot, and it's something that I think in the end holds all women back. I think we should turn into the best leaders we can be, and not turn into the best leaders that maybe society wants us to be, or that are viewed to be the best leaders. And there, I think there's a lot to learn, and especially when it comes to teamwork. This is something that women in teams probably, well, we need to tell each other sometimes, and maybe also coach each other a little bit in this.
Yeah, I understand completely what you say. Sometimes we try to make someone else's work or journey to a certain goal a little bit more difficult to achieve. And I understand when you mean that we should collaborate more, especially between women's. Sandra, do you want to add to what?
Yeah, I totally agree with helping each other out and supporting. But I also see that, you know, especially in politics, you know, it can be a nasty place to be as well sometimes, you know, and you have scarcity of places. And I think everywhere there's scarcity, you see that people will be, you know, more violent to each other or less motivating and supportive. So I think that's a great leap we have to take to achieve for all women and also men a better society. But if you talk about teams, I don't think it's really something which has to do with time, but especially has to do with people around you, you know, because sometimes there are people, and really there are also good people in politics, who see that you need to hear the voice of everybody, and that the voices aren't always the same faces we normally know for the past years. So I think it's really important, especially if you're women in a team, to help each other. Like what I was saying previous about when women talk, that men will take it differently. You can help each other by, if you're in a team and you see that someone's saying something and the rest is not listening, then you can help her, and also men can do that, to say, oh, the point Marit was making is really important. Could you tell me more about it? So that's how you give the floor back to someone who's actually taken, when somebody's taking the floor or mansplaining the thing a person just said, so it's sometimes it's unnoticed, but if you're going to look better at the situation, you can support each other by giving them their voices back.
Yeah, it's very true. Sometimes people don't get like the space and the time and the recognition they deserved, even though they made a very good statement or a very good point, or they brought something in a table that could be of use for the whole team. And they are often left behind. And that's, I think, something that occurs not only in politics, but could also be in businesses, also in the school environment, something that is very common to see. And the other question is quite interesting because it also relates back to being a woman in politics and not seeing yourself portrayed in the world that you live in. So, who inspired you? Who give you the inspiration to be or do what you're doing today? You can start. So Marit will follow.
Well, I have I because I also work as a trainer and a coach, so I meet a lot of men and women. And I think everybody can inspire me. Well, like women, and if we look at political women, I was greatly inspired and still am by Heidi Dancona, also from the Labour Party. So I think Marit will know her as well. She's like, one of our head leaders, and she was like, and still, if you talk to her, and she's in her 80s now, and she's still so inspiring because even now she's still fighting for women's rights and trying to empower us. And I think, practice what you preach is, I think, something which inspires me the most, because you meet a lot of people and some people just say, things, but they act differently. So I think it's really important to look to people how they act, not only what they say. And that inspired me as well to be authentic, to try to be the best as I can be, and always check myself is how can I help others achieving the path they want to achieve. And I think that's really important. So I try to talk with a lot of people to get more inspiration, and also, to get a ground check for myself. Like, am I still at the right place, and am I doing the right things? Am I, can I help everybody right now at this position? And I think it's really important to stay in touch with a lot of people, just to check yourself as well.
Yeah, it's very true. Like understanding the place that you are and the people that you're surrounded by will allow you to grow more. And I totally agree with the statement that you made about actions, that they really, like, actions are the actual thing that bring change, rather than people's words or statements, because they're just said. So yeah, Marit, do you have anything to add? Who inspired you?
Yeah, I think it's the same generation that Sandra is talking about. Women who I think started opening the pathway for women in politics in the Netherlands. If you look back at our history in the 1950s, 60s, there were very few, and in the 70s and 80s, some women became very active, and they were frontrunners across various parties. And I think they were frontrunners for most of us who are active and interested in politics right now. But there's also there's a lady, Madeleine Albright, the first Secretary of State from the United States, and she said there's a special place in hell for women who don't help women. And this is something that I have always found very inspiring. And in all my work, I have always kept this in mind, because I think it is really important that when you have the chance to help someone who is in your team or who is younger, then go for it. If you don't, well, you go to that special place in hell.
It's very true. That I'm going to definitely note that down for future references because it's a good quote to use. Thank you. Following those, this is the last question in the personal sphere. You all have worked in different countries and thus were exposed to different cultures. Have you noticed a significant difference in the way you were treated or in the workplace or also outside of the workspace? Like, can you maybe find any comparisons? Yeah, it's just interesting to navigate in that. Sandra, do you wanna start, or Marit?
Well, I only worked in the Netherlands, but as being a woman of color, I quite often get to hear how great I am in speaking Dutch. So, well, even in my own country, it is still sometimes you're like an exotic surprise or something. And I can't imagine, because my name is Sandra Doevendans, because I'm adopted. So my name is totally Dutch, but my face isn't, the first thing you would think of if you see a Dutch name. So when I used to work in sales as well, and then I made an appointment, and then I come to an office, and I will go to the reception and say, oh, I have an appointment with this kind of sir, and then they come downstairs and they're like looking, looking for Sandra Doevendans, and then I'm like, I think you're looking for a blonde girl, but it's me, and then they're like, oh wow, and you speak so good in Dutch. So I think people have everywhere in the world, they have like a special vision of how a person should look like. And I'm also converted at a later age to Islam. So then they're like totally in shock. It's like a Muslim and she's Dutch, and well, they just don't understand it. And still, I always try to make a joke out of it and try to, nicely let them know that they have to broaden their vision on how a person looks like and where they should or would belong to.
Yeah, I personally understand about the name and surname because I have a very European, Italian name and surname, and people are like, when they make the connection, they assume something is wrong. So I can clearly understand. Marit, do you have something to add?
Yeah, well, I was a diplomat for a long time, so I did live and work in various countries, in Latin America, but also in Africa. I worked a lot, and I lived in China for a few years. And all these countries have different approaches to women. But what I've always seen is that when you are a professional representing a country, you're a diplomat, then often in countries that I have worked, you are not seen as a man or a woman, but just as a diplomat representing the country, which I found really nice if you look in the context of Latin America or China. In the context of some more traditional and very conservative countries, I've worked in the Horn of Africa, in Somalia. There you're seen as a third gender, because the vision of society, men and women are the men and women that they know in this country, and the position of the men and women is very strict and very different. And then coming there being a diplomat representing a country like the Netherlands, I have never felt the difficulty of not being accepted, but I did see that I was treated completely different than local women. So this is what we often in that field of work call that you are the third gender. You're not a man or a woman, but something apparently that's also there, and they're dealing with you very professionally. But it's very different from what local women would probably experience.
Wow, that's actually very interesting to see how you are regarded as completely different if you move to another country, and it does.
Yeah, because I'm not blonde, but I'm quite white. It's because of the light also, but I am quite bleak. So you look completely different in these countries, even if you do try to sort of adopt with maybe somehow a scarf or something with a long skirt. but still, from first sight, they can tell that you are not you're not born there, you're not a local, and then you are approached in this way. So.
Yeah, thank you. So last question for the personal experience. What was the biggest milestone in your career? You can start.
Me?
Shall I?
No, Sandra, you go.
Well, I think my biggest milestone, I didn't get my biggest milestone yet. So I'm still working on it. I think, the sky's the limit. So I think this is a question, at the end of your life, maybe. But if I look back
on that in a few years, then.
Yes, well, if I look back at it now, I think that I was really proud of, because when I started in 2015, I had like the 8th place on the election form, and it was quite, because I'm from Amsterdam, but I had to go to the whole region, and I wasn't really, a famous person, or I didn't went to the youth club of our Labour Party. So I was like, I don't know, because at the end they will see how many votes everybody had. And I was like, well, I'm so curious what it will be, and some people would just buy a lot of things. And I'm like, okay, but I still had my debt also from the bar. I was still paying off, so I didn't have a lot of money. And then my first time I had almost 3,500 votes, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then last year I thought, well, it had to be more, because now, I already did it for 4 years. And then I almost had 8,000. So I was like really shocked. And also, so that's kind of a milestone. It shows that, even with the Dutch name, people noticed what I did, and, had the trust to give them my vote.
Nice. Marit,
well, I like
the
idea that Sandra has, that the milestone is still coming. We still have some time ahead, and the big achievements can maybe still be there in the future. But I think maybe if you look at it from a personal perspective, because this is still in the section personal. I remember when I wanted to go to China as a diplomat. My oldest son was 8 months old. Actually, when I applied for this job, he was 5 months old. So I just returned to work after being at home for pregnancy leave. And then my boss said, "But do you want to do that with a baby?" Mm-hmm. And I really sort of didn't like that answer, because I thought, I'm a professional. I'm supposed to be looked upon for what I do, and not for the fact that I have a baby. And I became a little bit sharp. Let's not say angry, but sharp. And I said, well, it's my decision. I think I'm competent. Look at what I've achieved so far, and if I can do it. And then in the end, I did get the job. I'm not sure if I got the job because of that conversation. But I think it helped me have this kind of discussion when people ask you questions about your personal life, which are completely not related to whether you are capable of doing a job. I learned a lot at that stage, and I realized that this is not something that your personal experiences can help you grow, and they can help you with your work, but they should never be something that is held against you, and especially not this type of personal experience, which is, I'm sure that my male colleagues who were same age, maybe also had wives that had just had babies, never had the question asked to them, do you really want to do that with a small baby? So I think that was a little bit, if you look from the personal perspective, probably a milestone and something that I learned.
Nice, thank you to share that. That personal experience is very inspiring. Okay, so now we're gonna approach the more work-related questions. So yeah, I think you can start, Marit, since you are on the floor, hypothetical floor. What do you think are the most important barriers to women achieving office in politics or power position relating to the political world? Yeah, let's start with that one.
Well, I think the most important, the most difficult step is the first step to take. You know, you have to go there yourself. And it's what we said in the beginning. I think Sandra said it very well. If you are applying for a job and there is 8 criteria, men have 4 criteria they can do perfect, and they think the other 4 I can learn, of course. And women know they have 7 criteria that are already perfectly on their resume, and they think, well, maybe they will ask a lot about this 8th criterion, and I probably cannot do it. So we have to really overcome ourselves. You know, the scouting that is done within political parties is also a scouting which is done on merit. But in the end, you have to step forward yourself to make sure that you are on that list. And once you are on that list, you have to also work. You know, it's not something that comes by itself. So I think this is a really important step for women, but also for parties to think of. Yeah.
Yeah. Sandra?
Yeah, to follow up
What
the first step, of course, that's the most important step, because then you're stepping out there. But I think the other thing, which is something you need to fight sometimes, is, well, the things I need to fight sometimes is that because of my face, and I'm like, you know, really nice and make jokes, and, you know, I consider myself as an easygoing person. But in politics, sometimes it's seen as that you have less depth. And especially sometimes in some groups, you're talking with people and they're always and most of the time it's men, and they're quite telling you like, I know this and I've done this for so many years, and I'm like, okay, but is this the criteria you always have to tell what you're doing and what you're capable of? So I think it's also finding a balance between being authentic and staying, you know, true to yourself, but also try to, you know, a little bit find your way in the sphere, or the how others achieve you and how others approach you. I think you have to find a balance in there, because otherwise you can speak that you want something, but still they don't choose you. So you always also have to learn the system you're going into, and then it's for you to be, authentic to yourself, and see how far you can go within that system before you can change the system.
Of course, you have to be self-aware and acknowledge like who you are in order to achieve the goal that you want to get. So it's, yeah, definitely a good suggestion. Second question. From the implementation of womenomics in Japan to gender-responsive budgets in Indonesia, countries around the world are making progress towards addressing gender issues. Yet structural and cultural barriers that prevent women's economic, political, and social participation remain. From your perspective, what should be done to address these barriers and help women achieve access to equal treatment in the field? Sandra, you can start.
Well, actually, within the European Parliament, our Labour Party colleagues of us have started the initiative of Equal Pay Day. So this year is the first International Equal Pay Day, and for the Netherlands, actually, all the women who are working for free from on the 14th of November until the end of the year. So in a whole lifetime, we women earn 300,000 euros less in our working life than men. So looking at all those young faces, we need to fight that, because that's something we need to do, because otherwise, you know, 300,000 euro, imagine it's like a house in Amsterdam, you know, or you can buy 3 Rolls Royces. It's such an amount in one lifetime, which we really need to work on, because, you know, most of the part is because still there's discrimination also within the equal pay. And people always, if we look at the Netherlands, then they say, well, we have it already in the law, you know, it's prohibited to have a different pay. But still, you know, women sometimes get less for the same work they do as men. And it's also something with to be more, to learn in being better at well, talk about your salary, you know, and try to get the most. But it's also a way we perceive our system, because if I'm a single mom, so, you know, if my kid is sick, they can only call me. But I see my friends, when they're married, the school will always call the women, you know. It's still in our system that it's always the woman who have to do and take care of the baby, especially what Marit just said, you know, she gets a baby and it's a question. A man gets a baby and nobody really thinks about it, that maybe he also needs to do something. And in the Netherlands, we had 2 days for men as a paternity leave, and now, woohoo, we have 5. Like, you know, first a woman has to carry a baby for 9 months, and then the father has 5 days to get to know the baby and feel connected, and also think, well, this is also mine, and I have to do something. You know, it's really, well, ridiculous, actually.
Yeah.
As a system, we think, well, you know, you carry the baby, you take care of it, and good luck with that.
Yeah, it's very divided. Like, men are just viewed as, oh yeah, it's okay, and women have to carry the whole weight by themselves. Marit, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I think it's important when you look at it from, you know, from your question and this perspective, there's formal and informal barriers. And I think in the Netherlands, legally, equality is there. So all the formal barriers are gone. There's a nice anecdote that Suze Groeneweg, who was the first woman in Dutch Parliament in 1919, she was elected in Parliament, and then men were actually looking around, and some men, it's interesting, if you want to, you can still read the minutes of those meetings, and they were saying, with her present in Parliament, that it was actually for men difficult to concentrate during the debate if the lady was there, and that the lady maybe would be very emotional, and it would be difficult for her to look at topics more from, let's say, more from a neutral perspective and more academic, because of the emotions that always drive women. Well, we're 100 years later. I think we have crossed that bridge, but still, if you look at the debates, if you look at the way that women are viewed when there is a sharp debate, and of course women sometimes have these sharp debates, then we are still in the informal discussions, or in the informal platforms, looking at women more like, it's a cat fight, or they're not serious, or they're very emotional. Whereas when a man is very emotional, he's very powerful, and he gives his opinion, and it's good. So it's, I think if you look at the informal barriers, there's still quite a lot informal barriers in the political system. But the point that Sandra made about the 5 days paternity leave, it's of course completely ridiculous. It's very low still, and it's below what is recommended as a European minimum, not a European average, European minimum of 10 days. And 2 days, which is what it was when I had my kids. My husband, the only thing he could do, unpaid leave, was say hello to the kid and register in the municipality, and that's it. This is actually what the 2 days were meant for, to say hello to the kids and to register the kids in the municipality, and that's it. So there was, when this law was made, there was no idea that men could also have a function in educating and in bringing up the children. This has changed a lot, but still, when you look at the way in which men and women divide tasks, it's in the Netherlands, we're not equal yet. Approximately 50% of women in the Netherlands that work are still, 50% of the women in the Netherlands are economically dependent on their partner, so they're not economically independent. What happens if you if a partnership or if a marriage breaks up, then you are there by yourself. You do not have enough money to survive for yourself or for your children. So this is something that we really, there's some big steps that we still have to take. And I think also politics could be an example, and to make sure that the formal system which facilitates is also changed into an informal system that facilitates equality between men and women.
Thank you. That's very interesting to listen and to understand. As I'm not Dutch, I really didn't know all of those things, and it's quite shocking to hear that only 5 days and before 2 were allowed for men to.
No, but this
take
is the
care of their
interesting
kids.
thing. We have the image of being very tolerant and very progressive. And I know that when foreign students or migrants or people that come here to work for short periods, when they really dive into our society, they're sort of shocked by the fact that that apparently we're not as progressive as we think. You see the house here is, I'm at the window, but my neighbors on the other side, they're a Spanish couple and they both work. They have very young children. And the lady, she once told me that they wanted to bring their children to daycare for 5 days because she works 5 days. And they were asked, sure, 5 days? And she said, yeah, that's what we did in Spain. And, you know, my husband work, I work. So, and she was shocked that actually they said, well, the maximum we do here is 4. And that was already quite a lot. No, it's very strange how these things work. You know, we look we somehow we have this image of being very progressive, which we are. You know, we are sexually very progressive and very open. But at the same time, in these other questions that are around our private life and around, especially around raising children, we are still quite conservative.
Yeah, that's what I also thought when I moved here. I was like, okay, not as I thought, but I mean, it's still a process. So hopefully things will change. 2 more questions, and then we're gonna jump on the Q&A as time is running, because, you know, times run fast when things are interesting. So how did you deal with big obstacles or even failure in your career, and what lesson did you learn, and how did it contribute to a greater success? Marit, you can start.
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson that I have learned is, well, what I said before, is step forward and do it yourself again, but also when things go wrong, or when you are in a position that you have a feeling that maybe things are not doing very well, you can maintain in that position. You can also look for a change. And the same thing happens that when you are in a position which is very comfortable. Because if you are in a position which is very comfortable, you do your work, you know, you go to work and everything is fine, you know what you have to do, you can stick to such a job for 20 years. But of course, then there is no growth. And the thing that I have learned about myself is that I need something to get the motor running. So I need something that challenges me. If everything is very easy, then probably I'm not doing the best of job anymore, also for the people around me. So I think that's the thing that I have learned most. If something really doesn't feel like you are 100% in it anymore, then you have to take the next step.
Thank you. I'm going to also note this down. So many quotes I need to note down from you. Sandra, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think for me, well, actually, I'm looking at my book right now. I wrote a book about debt, because as I told in the beginning, I sold my bar with a huge amount of debt. And I did it, I think it was 12 years until I paid everything. And in those 12 years, I raised my kid by myself. I got university diploma and I got into a regional parliament. And at the end, when I paid everything off, and that was like I think the beginning of 2018, and I was like, okay, so much, misery, or actually it was, it didn't feel like misery, but, it was hard. I think something good needs to get out of it. So at the end, I was thinking, people don't talk about debt. And that's why I wrote a book about it. And this month it will launch. So I think even though, in my darkest things, I try to make something positive of it. And sometimes it takes a lot of years, and then afterwards you think, oh, that was the lesson I needed to learn, or this is how I can, mold it in something to help others. And well, now I have a book, so I hope I can help others who are in debt right now. And especially if we look at Corona, there will be an economic crisis around it. So, well, I think even though if there are darker days, you can find a light sometimes to, change it in something good.
Yeah, thank you. Like, I really want to, like, from my side, say how impressed I am and how inspiring you are for handling all of those issues by yourself. It's incredibly strong to see. So it's definitely something that we can all learn, besides gender or no gender, to just handle things and be faithful to who you are and have hope, I guess, because there's a lot of hope that you need to overcome all of those issues. So I'm gonna just give a closing questions, and then we can follow up to the Q&A. What is something that everyone should know about the world from your experience? Sandra?
Oh, sorry.
I think my mic is a little bit like late. I'm sorry.
Well, I think sometimes I wish others would, especially if we look at the debate about diversity and inclusion, and, things are shifting with the Black Lives Matter and the Black Pete, is a Roetveeg Piet right now. I think it's really important for others always, if you look at someone and you hear a story, there's like a different story behind it, and I think try to ask questions instead of, make your own opinions about people, and just see where that opinion or that, attitude is coming from, because I think that can help you to, well, sometimes tolerate someone, or maybe, get to know someone and see the comparison, and find a way to, work with each other. And I think within politics, it's really important, because, if you want to do something in politics, you need, more than 50% of the rest to get along. So it's really important to, get to know each other and see where are the buttons you can press, or where's something which you like about the other person, which is maybe an idea or the way people handle things. Because what I've learned a couple of years in those years in politics, and also, in my working life, sometimes you see someone and it's like, you get annoyed by someone, and then, try to look in yourself, like, what is it? Am I jealous, or is it something the other person is doing what I want to do? Or, maybe I don't want to do it, but what can I learn from that? Why am I irritated by someone else? Or, why do I get, sometimes you feel it in your body, So I think it's really important to check yourself a lot of times, and also see how you can find a thing to work together and achieving the things and the goals you want to achieve.
Definitely. Yeah. Also going to note this down. Marit?
Yeah, maybe if you bring it to politics, something that I have learned, that it is okay to disagree, and even sometimes if someone or a certain party is completely out of your, let's say, moral scope, or out of your way of thinking, still you have to try and connect with them, because they also represent a certain group within our society, and they represent people that maybe have honest worries, or look at society differently. And it's something that we need to connect, and continue to connect even with those who are well, on the other side of the political spectrum. And at the same time, if you look at now the daily work from politics, what I've learned, that sometimes that with parties that normally you don't agree with, but on certain topics you can move forward and try and find coalitions within. We are maybe those who are from Belgium are familiar with the system, but many other countries do not have that many parties as we have here in the Netherlands. So you need to find coalitions, you need to cooperate, and you need to work together. and also across barriers, and maybe sometimes with someone that is sort of very far away from your own political scope. But if you want to move forward, you have to move forward with a majority, and you have to find a coalition to come to that majority.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's we often think that we work better with people that think the same as we do, but sometimes it's also true that we have to step out of our comfort zone and find a good solution to combine different perspective and different point of view to reach a certain goal. So that's definitely a good point. So now we can move to the Q&A. I think we can start from the ones in the, in the chat, and then if anyone wants to address a specific question, you can just directly unmute yourself and speak up. So tracing back quite some questions.
Maybe it would be a good idea if you have a question, you can also raise your hand so we can unmute you, or you can mute
also.
Otherwise,
Yeah,
start talking.
I'm quite bad with this technology, but yeah, you can also do that. I'm just quickly going to address the one from the chat because they were here for a while. Let's see. So Zep, okay, I want to apologize because some names I probably wouldn't be able to spell them correctly as they're in Dutch. So I'm just going to try to do my best. Zap van de Visse, sorry for the pronunciation. As a politician in the PVDA, do you think the neoliberal wave has affected sexism in society significantly? Who wants to start, Marit or Sandra?
Well, maybe if you look at it more from a historic point of view, I must be honest, but the Social Democrats were not the first fighters also for equality in our society. It took a little time. It took until, well, in the 70s and 80s, yes, but before that, not so much. And at the same time, also, in the 80s, there was the early 80s, within the European context, there was a European regulation on equality in the social security system for men and women. This did not exist in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, we had the familiar nucleus, and there was the head of the family, the person that earned the most money, generally the man, who received all the social benefits, and also was the one that was paying for the social benefits in that structure. And we had to change that law in the Netherlands, and that was not easy. It was not easy, and also Social Democrats needed to be convinced to change that law, because it was obligatory from the European regulation. But there was quite some discussion that this would cost a lot of money, and it was difficult, and so there was some debate about that as well. And I'm not so sure if the neoliberal wave has been affecting feminism in society. I think it's more of a conservative traditional wave, like a conservative traditional wave of people looking back at the 50s and the 60s as those years being years that were culturally more stable, and society was easier, and there were less problems. And of course, these were years where in the Netherlands, now we were talking about 50% that was economically independent. In those years, it was practically zero. Very few women would work, and very few women had a good position in politics, or had a position in politics, period. So I'm not so sure if it was the neoliberal wave. I think it's more of a sort of conservative traditional wave that we are seeing right now that is holding women back. Yeah.
Sandra, would you like to add?
Yeah, I think also if you look at the historical, most of the societies have a patriarchy background, so men were always the head of the household. And I think if you look at the brain, we have like a biased vision of a society, and that's the same thing. If you look at the Netherlands, it looks really progressive, but if it takes such a long time to make from 2 days to 5 days, if we look at a fatherhood and a paternity leave, we have a great way to go, you know, and I don't think it's neoliberal or social democrats. I agree with Marit. It's conservative, but it's also, you know, people from our brain, like the brain, the old brain part. We can only look at society and look at things in two ways, you know. It's all binaural, so it's really difficult. It's yes or no, and I think from all those years where men were, you know, the boss, and women couldn't do stuff because of law or because of society, it's still in there right now. And I think it's really important, because I saw one of the questions also, how can men help women? I think it's really important we do it all together, you know, because even though if you're in a meeting and you see that, you know, there's a woman colleague of you or a student who's saying something significant and you think that's really important, just, you know, give her the floor again. That's a way to help her. But also if you see there's an open opportunity for something, just look in your own environment and look for some, you know, woman who you can motivate to just try it, or see how you can help her, you know, what is holding her back. And I think that's a really important thing also to get rid of sexism, because then we really support each other and we can, you know, get more women in different positions.
Nice, thank you. Another question that I had to trace back because I thought this was really interesting is, would you see or think that women make a different policy than men? Because often that's what people think or assume in the political world, that we make things differently because of the way we are. So would you see that happening in real life?
Well, there's conservative women and progressive women as well. I don't think women in general are very different. But what is obvious is that if you represent a group, and if you have a group, if the group is 100% homogeneous, then you will not get the best out of it. So if you have a more heterogeneous group, which, and we always say, you know, the threshold should be 30%, otherwise it's very difficult for the individual to be different in the group and also to change the dynamics of the group. So you need a 30% threshold for things to change. I think then you will have an effect. There's one thing which I also found, you know, when we talk about the Netherlands, also found interesting, is that here in the Netherlands, we in Parliament, we don't have a human rights committee or a women's committee. Whereas in most other parliaments in Europe, but also in many other countries, there is a women's caucus, or there is a women's committee, or there is a human rights committee that talks about certain gender topics. And I always found it interesting that we don't have that in the Netherlands. And it's probably because we have this feeling that emancipation has finished, which was a statement of one of our ministers, I think 15 years ago. And emancipation didn't finish. There is still quite a lot to do. So, and you can only do that if you are there together and if you are part of it. And I think, of course, women should not only be champions of feminism. When you are a female politician, you can also be a very good politician in healthcare, or in defense policy, or in foreign policy. But I think it's important for female politicians to also have this in mind, that if you have a larger percentage of women, then the dynamics of the discussion simply changes.
Okay, since we're running a little bit out of time, I'm gonna jump on another question. I would like to remind people that they can unmute themselves and ask the question directly instead of writing them down. So maybe that could be also a little bit faster as people want. Otherwise, I'll just keep reading from the chat.
I think that's the last one is probably is interesting, because this is a controversial issue, whether you're in favor of quota or not.
Yeah.
I remember I did women's studies in the University of Amsterdam in somewhere early 1990s when I was studying there. And there was an older lady she was I think it was called a contract student back then. So she just did a number of courses at the university. Maybe she was younger than I am now, but I thought she was an older lady. And we were talking about quota then. And she said, I am completely in favor of quota. And then another student said, but you know, in Dutch we say there's an excuusterus, you know, the excuse woman, if you have quota. And she said, if it takes an excuse woman to have a woman, at least we have a woman. And this is something that I've always remembered. Als we een excuustruus nodig hebben, hebben we in elk geval een truus, for the Dutch amongst us. And I really liked that saying. I used it many, many times afterwards. Because I think if you, there's many, sorry for guys here, there's many mediocre men who come in high positions. And women, before they are challenged to be within a quota, they are already capable of doing it. So yes, I am absolutely in favor of quota, as long as we don't get to this threshold of 30% in various spheres of society. I think we need the quota.
I
Yeah,
also
we needed quota, because if you don't know or you don't believe, and it can be, you know, it has. If you look at women and we look at men, sometimes men just think they know better, or like mansplaining. It has a name, you know. And if you don't put women on places where men can really see, oh well, you know, she's quite, you know, she has quite points, and this is really intelligent what she's saying, we don't get through that glass barrier. So yes, I'm totally in favor of quota, and especially also not only gender but also in diversity, because it's the same system and the same structure we're fighting against.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to read this one because I find it quite interesting. It is from our very own Day. Is policy change enough to create equality, or do we need more broad and societal change?
I think
Sandra, you can kick off, yeah?
Yes, I think we need it both ways, you know, because of course at a political level you can change things and we can put it in laws, like the equal pay, you know. In law it's prohibited to have a different pay, but still we have it in society. And also what Marit said about her Spanish neighbors, you know, if you want to bring your kids to the daycare for 5 days and they look at you like, oh, you're a bad mom, you know. When I was, because I'm a single mom, sometimes I was also viewed as, you know, how can you go and do studying and work and be in politics and raise a kid? Well, your kid must be going, you know, become a criminal or something, you know, because there's like a view on how women should raise kids and how we have to act, you know, we don't have to speak up. And, you know, so I think society is also really important to take within the change, maybe even more important than the political change, because if society agrees on changes has to be made, then politics will follow. Because, you know, if you look at the gender issues, I think most of the work, especially if you look at also in the Netherlands, it were the women on the ground, you know, in society who were making the changes. And then at the end, politics had to go and, you know, change it in law as well. But it comes from out of society. So, you know, you're all young and still have energy, and I hope a lot of hope. So, you know, don't give up and really try to change society for the better.
Yeah, I think that's something we have to keep up reminding ourselves, especially in those times where we see that when we try to make change, everything else come against us. So keeping, like, having to remind ourselves to push forward is something very important.
Yeah, if I may add,
yeah,
Naomi, I think if you look, because Sandra is right, and if you look at all the things that we ask from women, because right now we think, no, women, they should study, they should be smart, they should be looking good. Of course, they have to have children and find a job and do a good job. There's a lot of pressure on young women, really a lot of pressure. And I think the only way to take that pressure off is for men to ask the same of men. The only way to make sure that there is more equality and more societal change. I like the fact that it was a guy asking this question, but probably you are already on the good track if you are organizing this kind of event. also as guys. But I think the only real possibility of getting societal change is getting men and women to do all, to be the perfect mom, to look at your best, to have the perfect job, do all it together. It's not possible. You need a guy next to you.
Yeah, I totally agree. As time is running quite quickly, I think I'm just going to read the last two questions.
I have a question, if I can.
Of course.
Ask. As Sandra before mentioned maternity and in the field of jobs, I wondered do you think it's fair to ask a woman, for example, during a job interview, if she is planning to get pregnant in the near future, and make this information relevant for the employment?
It's against the law. Sorry.
Well, in Italy, it's not actually, because some people think that it is fair actually to ask a woman this kind of information, and because maybe it can have like an economical impact on the society. I mean, on the firm. So, yeah, I don't know how it actually works in the Netherlands. So.
Yeah, in the Netherlands, like Marit says, it's against the law to ask us.
What is happening?
But especially if you do have it in Italy, I would advise you to ask this question right back at the person who's asking, because a baby you don't get alone. So you really need a man to make one. So there's also, if a woman gets a baby, then there's also a man somewhere who's getting a baby.
Yeah, of course, I totally agree. But that's the real point, actually. It's just because in Italy, it's actually very common to ask this kind of questions to women during a job application, actually.
But I think because also now we're talking about babies, but I see it for myself. Sometimes people think that I'm too busy because I'm a single mom, and then they don't ask me if I want to do something, and they just assume, oh, I'm gonna ask the guy to do that. And then later I hear, oh, well, I was they made a decision for me, So I think it's really important to always, as a woman, always speak out and say, well, you didn't ask that to a man. And also, if men are being asked to do something, ask also sometimes, did you ask another lady in the group to do it? Maybe sometimes you need to take a step back to push someone forward. And if you really want to have equality within society, it means sometimes you need to push someone else in front of yourself to get the chance and get the change done.
Yeah, maybe if I can still add, the question here in the Netherlands, you're not allowed to ask that question formally as an employer, but of course it happens. And sometimes, and there was a research done by the Human Rights Committee, I think not so long ago, and the conclusion was that there is a lot of discrimination of women who are pregnant, because maybe they have temporary contracts that are not continued, or other people get the long-term contract or get the different job. So there is, in effect, there is discrimination when for pregnant women or women with small children. On the other hand, I think there is a thing, this question about, is policy change enough? If the societal system, if politics and if policy, also economically, is organized well enough that this will not be an economic burden to a company. Because there is, for example, in the Netherlands, if a woman becomes pregnant, then the company receives during 4 months, it's quite short, we have the shortest pregnancy periods in the Netherlands, not the shortest pregnancy period, sorry, that's always 9 months, but the shortest pregnancy leave in the Netherlands from the European Union. But during those months, the company receives a compensation, an economic compensation, in which they can hire someone else, or maybe temporarily do the job differently. So if society, if the policy is organized in such a way, then it's not an economic burden for a company. At the same time, I think if a company wants somebody and you want to invest in somebody, then what is 4 years, 4 months, maybe out of a period of 5 or 6 years that you work somewhere?
Oh, I was muted.
You should unmute yourself.
Technology again. I'm so bad. No, I was saying that it's interesting to see, and I'm also Italian, and yeah, they often ask those weird, inappropriate questions when you're applying, like when you're applying for a job, and most of them are inappropriate.
Also women do. Also women ask this kind of question. That's the sick point. I can't think. So
I totally agree.
Yeah, there's a special place in hell, Martina, for those women.
Exactly. I'm gonna put this on my forehead wherever I go.
But we can't forget that it's also, you know, if there's a story has been told so many times, you're gonna believe in it. So sometimes it's not even, you know, they mean it as a, you know, as deserving to get that place in hell. Sometimes they just need a help and get a mirror, you know, and tell them like, why would you ask that question, and try to get that conversation going to save her from that place in hell and get her in your same side so you can fight the system together.
Yeah, but also this makes more difficult for young women, especially for young ones, to find a job, because there is more probability to get pregnant if you're young, you know. So there is a big discrimination for women in this country.
Yeah, 100%. That's a very good point. So since we're running out of time, I'm just gonna ask the last question from Caspers. How do you approach a situation where you are being treated indifferently from a man, and how do you command respect from people who are sexist? Sandra, wanna start off?
It depends, because, well, not always you're in your own strength. So sometimes you approach that situation better than others. If it's really noticeable, I always try to, in a nice way, say it or make a joke out of it, so it doesn't come. Because if you're, you know, attack the other one, they don't listen to you, and then you're the emotional, you know, cry woman. So I always try to stay calm, which is not easy, because, you know, sometimes you just get angry. But I think it's really important to ask questions. Why would you assume that? Or why do you think that this is a better solution? So first ask questions, and then, you know, attack, but on a nice way.
Thank you. Marit?
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. And also adding to that, sometimes in the heat of a conversation, it's not, or heat of a debate or something that you have to do, it's not very easy to bring the topic up to the table. But I do think that you have to do it really quickly afterwards, because if you don't say anything about it, then it hasn't been there, but it has been there, of course. So you always have to, you know, either in the heat of the discussion, make a joke, like Sandra says, or approach the person maybe the next day or call the next day and say, well, you know, this and that was said during our meeting, or this happened during the meeting, and I'm not so comfortable with it because of, no, and then you explain the situation. I think you always have to, if you let it slip away, then it's very difficult to approach the person again later on the same topic. If you let it slip away, then it's gone and it's not there. But of course it is there. So I think you always have to address it.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. Even though sometimes I feel like I have to be the one to step down to make sure that people don't get like an image out of myself, you know. So I always have to be the calm one. But it's true. It's for our own sake, if I can use this term. Anyways, thank you so much. Oh yeah.
Sorry, Naomi, to help you. What helps me, because it's sometimes difficult to stay calm. But if you have like a group of close friends where there's really a safe environment, which you can call or, you know, do a Zoom, and you can just, you know, without hesitation, just throw it all out, you know, so you don't address it to the person, the anger to the person you want to actually say it to, but find your friends, you know, your closest, where you can just say it and without being political correct, just throw it out, because otherwise it stays in your system, and that's not good for your soul, you know, it lures you to the dark side. So find your great friends and throw it out, and then be calm with the person you need to address the situation.
Thank you. I will definitely do that. I'm on my way to learn how to be vocal but not extreme, as my parents say all the time, which my dad is also here. So that's definitely something I have to learn. And I really want to thank you, both of you, for your time and your dedication in answering those questions. And personally, I really want to say that I've learned a lot, and I will definitely make use of all the quotes and the ideas and inspiring lessons that you shared with us today. And especially, yeah, as a woman of color, I hope to look up to you guys, to pave my way and find my own space in a place that sometimes is very uncomfortable. So I really want to thank you, myself, but also on behalf of All20. And Dede, if you want to just add something, or...
Yeah, well, first of all, again, thank you, Sandra and Marit, for taking the time on this, well, during this very strange time, of course, as well, which is also why our third speaker, right, wasn't able to make it in the end. But again, right, we are a political party, and if anyone wants to help us, you know, bring these kinds of topics really to the forefront and really, you know, fight for the kinds of change that are really needed in society and in university, of course, feel free to reach out to us if you have any ideas of other topics we can discuss and you know, debate on even, or just hear someone out on. Feel free to message me or anyone else in the party. And again, thank you for you for giving us your time, and thank you for everyone else for attending the event. And yeah, that being said, maybe Marit and Sandra want to give a little goodbye message, and then we can close off the meeting.
No, thank you. I think it was really nice. And Naomi, I think you're very inspiring. I'm sure you will make it. Thank you very much for organizing this event. Also, Anton and Dede, I think it's good that men are involved in this topic. So thanks a lot.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And to if there are women, but also men in here who wants to have a discussion later, or, you know, if you just have a question, I will put my email address in there, so you can always contact me, and try to find your safe space where you can let it all out, you know, and regain power and never lose hope, because, you know, you are the change, because you're still our future, you know.
Thank you very much. Honestly, it means a lot. So
thanks everyone, and I hope you have a very nice weekend, and stay safe, stay home, and I see you maybe in the next event. Bye everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.